Welcome to Marketing Monday. I'm Paula Williams with ABCI. Today we have a question from Dale. Dale is his middle name. He did not want you to know his first name, which is cool. Dale asks us, how do I set a price for a new MRO service that we've not offered before? Great question, Dale, and thank you for asking it. Anybody that asks us a question that we use on the air in our Marketing Mondays, we send our social media guide for aviation professionals. So this is about 120 pages of social media goodness, and that will be on its way to you in the snail mail. So to answer the question, how do I set a price for a new MRO service that we've not offered before? Now, this is something that is going to take more than 5 minutes to really answer, but I'm going to give you the 5-minute overview, right? Okay, so 3 things. First, figure out your minimum. 2, look at the competing services and how much they charge. And 3, when in doubt, price high and justify. So I'll explain. First of all, figure out your minimum. Obviously, you don't want to lose money on a service. There are some times when people have a very specific strategy to use a product or service or use an offer to acquire new customers, and they actually will lose money. They call that a loss leader. In the MRO industry and of course in the aviation industry, we don't typically do that. So I really recommend making a profit or coming out in the black on this. So in order to do that, you have to figure out, what are you spending on supplies? What are you spending on hours, overhead, marketing, time to set up this new product, time to follow up, all of those things. And a lot of people will underestimate this and just do, time and materials, especially for a service. And you want to make sure that you're counting enough to account for all of that, all of the additional overhead, all of the additional marketing, anything that you're doing special for this product. And also any additional time if you're going to end up having to hire temporary people or anything else that you think you may need in order to offer this service and do a really good job of making sure that it's done well. This is where a lot of people get into trouble when they discount things too much or they price things too low in a Groupon or a situation like that where they're pressured to do a big discount. And they don't count all of their costs and they end up actually losing money. So the last thing you want to be doing is working your butt off to lose money, right? Okay, so thing number 1, figure out your minimum. Thing number 2, look at competing services. So how much would people pay to do the alternative to whatever your product is? So you might think, well, this is a new service and nobody else is doing this, so we don't have any competitors. That's wonderful. But people are getting by somehow without you doing what you're doing. So what is that costing them? Whatever they're doing instead of what you're doing. So, if it's a new product or service, what is the old product or service that it's replacing? Or, the alternative might be to do nothing. So, in the sense that one of our clients sells logbook software for aircraft logbook software. And the option to that is just doing it all on paper. Well, how much does that cost? And what risks are you incurring in doing it that way? So, the alternative may not be a direct competitor. It might be the alternative, what they're doing now. So, look at competing services. And 3, when in doubt, price high and justify, right? Okay, so there are some list of services, that are either people that are directly competing with you or alternatives that we mentioned before. You want to be the most expensive or the second most expensive option on the market. And now you may be thinking, I have a hard time, more people will buy it if I price it lower. Not true. Best-selling watch in the country is probably one of the highest priced watches in the country. Best-selling phone in the country, you can't see it because I'm talking to it, is my iPhone sitting there, which is not the least expensive phone on the market. So, you want to make sure that you are charging enough in the aviation industry. Sometimes they call that something like being reassuringly expensive. And an example of that is if you see someone selling a Rolex for $40, you might think, the first thing that comes into your mind is, what's wrong with it? So people expect to pay a certain amount for a certain type of service. And if you are charging that amount or maybe even a little bit more, being what we call reassuringly expensive, that is not a terrible thing, because people would rather spend the money than take an inordinate risk, right? Especially in the aviation industry. Okay. So you want to be the most expensive or second most expensive option on the market, but you also want to make sure that your product or service is worth it, right? If it is the most expensive or second most expensive option on the market, it has to be the best product that's available in its category. So you want to make sure that you're doing that. And, by adding services, by making sure that the quality is what it needs to be, by offering a really stupendous guarantee, there's lots of things that you can do to make sure that your product is worth it. We have an article on our website about the 4 different pricing philosophies and why we choose the one that I just explained. It's called premium pricing, a philosophy for most of our clients in the aviation industry. So there are lots of other pricing options. There's penetration pricing that we mentioned, or skimming, lots of other things. But in a lot of cases, they are either not sustainable or not appropriate for the aviation industry. So Dale, thank you for asking the question. And once again, how do I set a price for my new MRO service that we've not offered before? 1, figure out your minimum. 2, look at competing services. And 3, when in doubt, price high and justify. So thank you for joining us for Marketing Monday. We'll see you next week. If you have a question, submit it in the comments, send me an email, or put it in the comments on our blog. Any way that we get it, we will be happy to, if we feature it once again, we'll send you a copy of our book. Talk to you next week.